Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Foreign Fork Live. My name is Alexandria. I'm from the Foreign Fork, and today we have a very special guest, Jaughna from Two Up Place. Hi, Jaughna.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. I'm doing well.
Good. I'm so excited to talk to you today. We're going to be talking about Denmark, and you are currently living in Denmark, so I thought it was going to be fun. I'm going to start, we're going to project this onto Instagram Live too, so I'm going to start presenting on live, and you can join in a second while we wait for some people to join the live too.
Yeah, fantastic.
All right. I think I am presenting live on Instagram. I think it's loading here. Hi, Marina. Nice to see you. All right. I'm going to sit here for a second. We'll let some people join. You can say hi to them as they're joining. Jaughna, do you see my live yet?
I see you're live.
Perfect. Oh, Henry just joined. Hi, Henry. There we go. I see you.
I see you're live.
Henry just waved. All right. There we go. I will add you in here. Mute myself here.
Oh.
Not working. Are you able to turn the sound off maybe on your computer?
Yeah, let me.
That was so weird. We just tested it and it was fine. Time to talk to me today. I'm really excited to sit down and talk to you. I think we mentioned it on the Facebook and YouTube Live, but you are from, well, you're not from Denmark, but you're living in Denmark right now, right?
That is correct.
Perfect.
I'm living again.
Okay, so you and I met one another last year in November at the Saveur Awards, the 2019 Saveur Blog Awards. And that was so exciting and so fun. You actually won both categories of both sections, I guess, both awards in your category, right?
Yeah, I did. So my blog, uh-oh.
Okay, I am now unmuted.
Okay, perfect. I think that will be good. You don't have a sound loop, right?
No, but everything's good now.
Okay, perfect. Okay. So tell us about the category that you were in and a little bit about what that experience was like. It was so fun to meet you there. So I just want to hear from your side what your experience was like there and what it was like being nominated and all those things.
Yeah, so as you said, we both met in Cincinnati at the Saveur Blog Awards last November, and you were nominated and won for Most Groundbreaking Voice. And my blog, Two Up Place, was nominated for Best Culinary Travel Blog, and ended up winning both the Editor's Choice category of that, category. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. And the Reader's Choice, and which was in and of itself incredible and so unexpected. And I still sometimes pinch myself to say, did that really happen? But even aside from that, just meeting you, and there's so many talented like home cooks and photographers and writers, and the energy was so great. It was such a sense of community, and I'm just really grateful for that experience. It was fantastic.
Yeah, it was so fun. And you were the only person that won both awards in your category. So that was a really cool thing to see for you. I think you were the only person, right?
Maybe. I think someone in the drinks category might have, but he wasn't there. I could be wrong.
Oh, yes, you might be right. And it was really nice to actually meet you in person too, because I remember when we both got nominated, you reached out to me on Instagram before. We had never met before. We had never talked. And you're like, hey, I just wanted to say congratulations. I can't wait to meet you in Cincinnati. And that made me, I was kind of nervous to go because obviously didn't know anybody else that was going to be there. And I was like, oh, this girl, I didn't even know your name at that time. She reached out to me. She said, she's excited with you. So I have like those little friends there already. So
that's sweet.
Really cool.
That's, yeah, it is. It's intimidating. I mean, you like you said, you don't know the other people, or you typically don't know the other people in the other categories. And yeah, it can be intimidating because, you have like little me with, a small little blog, and then you have people who are, on TV shows there too. And you're like, ah.
I totally get that. That's exactly how I felt too. Well, yeah, even when I met you there back in November, I already knew. I was like, Denmark's coming up. I got to chat with you during Denmark because I knew you were living there. So it's going to be really fun. So we kind of already touched base about this, but you are not originally from Denmark, but you're living there now. So tell me a little bit about where you grew up, what your experience was like, because you grew up on the Virgin Islands, which used to be a territory of Denmark, right? So tell us a little bit about that, and then what happened so that now you're living in Denmark?
Yeah, so I grew up in the U.S. Virgin Islands. We're now American, but 100 years ago we were Danish. We were a Danish colony. So many of our street names are still in Danish. We still have old Danish colonial architecture. And actually, my last name is Danish because my mom's great-grandparents immigrated over from Denmark to the Virgin Islands. So there's always kind of this tie to Denmark, for good or for bad, or however people interpret it. And so I never had any intention of moving here. That was never really in my plan. But when I was living in East Africa, I fell in love, and he happened to be Danish. So we moved here about 4 years ago, and yeah, we're living in Copenhagen. So
that's so cool. I didn't even know the East African fact. Where were you in East Africa?
Yeah, I was in Tanzania for 6 years.
Wow, what were you doing there?
I was working for a USAID-funded reproductive health project. So I worked in public health in a previous life. So I was doing that.
That's so wonderful. That's awesome. I had no idea.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you're living in Copenhagen, Denmark, and you have a food blog, obviously. So tell me a little bit about the website that you have, and it's food and travel blog, kind of, right?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that. What made you start that? What exactly do you feature?
Yeah, so I started the blog when I was living in Lima. So after we left Tanzania, we moved to Peru, and my partner had.
My dream life over here.
Yeah, I was like, I was like, subtle brag. No, but we were living in Peru. My partner had a job, and I didn't. And I was going a little stir crazy, waiting for my visa, meeting friends, brushing up on my Spanish. And the thing to do in Lima is to eat. I mean, the food is fantastic. And so I started eating. And then as my Spanish got better, I started kind of hanging out with the abuelas and like asking them about stuff. And then like, yeah, I mean, the abuelas, man, they know everything. Listen to the abuelas. But even in Tanzania, before I could talk to people, I realized quite quickly that food was a gateway into cross-cultural interactions. Like before I could even greet people properly in Swahili, we could talk about food. So that I was kind of sitting there, and then I was like, well, maybe I should start writing about this. And yeah, that's kind of how the blog started. So it's an expat perspective. So someone who is not from that country, but is living in that country and kind of my interpretation or the things I've learned talking to people and researching about food from that country. So
very cool. So are all of your articles about food?
Not all of them, but quite a lot of them are.
Most of them. Okay.
Yeah.
So you have Tanzania,
Uh-huh.
Peru,
Uh-huh.
Denmark.
Yes.
Any other countries featured on there?
Yeah, so Croatia's one featured. We were traveling around and I heard about this truffle thing from a local that Croatia had some fantastic truffles. So we went on a truffle hunt and it was one of my...
Truffle mushrooms or truffle chocolate?
Oh, truffle mushroom tubers. Yeah, underground. Okay. So we met with another abuela, but not abuela in Croatian. And she's like the matriarch of the family, and she's been looking for truffles in this one part of the forest since like the maybe 60s or 70s. And oh yeah, it's up on the on YouTube. Yeah, on the stream. But yeah, we did that, and so I wrote about that. And so sometimes when we travel, we always include food. So I like to talk about experiences more than kind of restaurants.
Okay, that makes sense. That's cool. That was like a really fun experience. And look at that cute dog too.
The dogs were incredible. So that one dog, the Labrador, they were training, and bless that little dog's heart, that dog was not very good. So he could not focus. Yeah.
And to all the people watching too, you can ask any questions for Jaughna as they come up about Denmark too. So if you have any things to add or any questions about anything we're talking about, feel free to put that in the chat. We'd love to talk.
Yeah, please do.
All right. So you did not grow up in Denmark, so I won't ask you about what school is like there, but I am really interested in forest preschools. Please tell me more about what a forest preschool is and what it's, I mean, you've never been to one obviously, but
no,
what is the experience for?
But I'm fascinated because I think they're adorable. So essentially it's pre-K and the equivalent of pre-K and kindergarten in the US. So before they start first grade. And essentially every day they go out into the forest. So it's learning in the forest. So
is there a classroom in the forest, or do they have a separate classroom?
So I was just actually talking to my friend who's also a mom, and she was telling me there's a designated spot where you drop off the kids every day, and every day they just go somewhere different. They have like different missions. Maybe they're foraging, maybe they're learning about something, but rain or shine. And so sometimes you'll see them at the bus stop, and they're so cute because they it gets cold here, so they're in these little like puffer onesies with like their little like pointed hats, and they're just like waiting for the bus to go into the forest, and they have no concept of bad weather because they go like rain or shine. And so it's some kids love it, some kids don't. I mean, so you're every day in the forest being active. And so if your child is high energy, it's quite ideal for a child, but some kids don't like it and some kids love it. So I'm fascinated.
What do they do? Like, do you learn about like the plants and things like that? Like, kind of start off your education, getting introduced to like nature? Is that?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. I mean, I think when they're much, much smaller, it's what you would do in daycare. So kind of sing songs and kind of more like camp when you're little probably would be the best reference point. And then as they get older, it starts to be a little bit, learning about trees and what you can eat. And it's kind of like Girl Scouts meets Boy Scouts meets camp meets daycare.
Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting. I love that concept. I was reading about it when I was doing my research for Denmark, and I was like, okay, I need to ask her about this.
Yeah, they're really cool.
Okay, so perhaps you were talking about the weather and how it gets very cold there. And so I live in Michigan, and it gets very cold in Michigan. And I always find that in the summer months, I'm like just a little bit less happy than I am in the winter months, I'm a little bit less happy than I am in the summer months because it's dark and it's cold. And so I always figured that all countries that were snowy and things like that felt that way. But Denmark has quite a bit of snow, and it's also considered one of the happiest countries in the world, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about that. Do you, as somebody that has lived in lots of countries and then went and moved to Denmark, do you agree with that statistic that Denmark is one of the happiest countries in the world? And if so, why do you think that they've gotten that reputation? Yeah,
so as I said, in a previous life, I worked in public health. So I can't help but notice that I do have problems with the metric of happiness because what exactly they're measuring.
Right.
But no, I would say it's generally I would say it's accurate, and I would say two things generally. One would be the cultural aspect of it. I think Danes and Scandinavians in general, particularly compared to Americans, are a lot more relaxed on a lot of things, and I think, yeah, that definitely makes them happy. I might not say the word happy, but when you're more relaxed about things, your stress level looks different, and then.
Well, so that's a good way to
yeah,
think about
maybe it's
in regards to happy.
Yeah, maybe stress levels is a better. Not to say people don't get stressed here, and that there's things, bad things don't happen, but yeah, people are just generally a little more relaxed, particularly around like your bodies, child rearing, like it's just a lot more free, if you will. And then the other thing I would say is economical. The welfare state. So you don't have crippling student loan debt. You don't have crippling medical debt. So just imagine starting your career as 21, 22 or whatever, and not having $100,000 under your belt. Like that just makes me happy thinking of it. So
it was interesting to read about too, because I was interested in that statistic, and so I was reading a lot about it. And most of the articles I read were describing pretty much what you described too, like a lot about in regards to like universal healthcare and like those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
But there was one article that took the opposite side, that said that yes, they have the highest rate of happiness or something like that in the country, but also they have one of the highest rates in the world of antidepressants. And I was interested about that too. I don't know if you knew that statistic, but that was one of the articles that I remember saying too. So I was like, that's so interesting. So that's why when you said stress, I was like, well, maybe that's a different way to word it. Or
maybe it's level of satisfaction. I mean, there's lots of things I notice. Like, for instance, if you divorce and you have kids, your dating life is not affected by that at all. There are plenty where I feel like in the US we would call it baggage. It would be harder to find. It's just, things just flow differently. So maybe it's a stress level or satisfaction more than, yeah.
And I know there's like 5 weeks of vacation instead of
there's that
typical 8 days in the United States. So
that
probably contributes a little bit too, right?
Yeah, and you can, it's, particularly as American, it's hard to imagine what your life could look like if you didn't have to worry about student loan debt. But it can be, if you wanted to be a firefighter, you could be a firefighter, pay all your bills, have 5 weeks. Like, I don't know, there's not that same pressure. Like you have to be this, in the US, a lot of times it's like doctor, lawyer, like that's what you have to be successful. We're here, you can open up an art gallery, and it's just different.
That's wonderful. Making me want to visit. Okay, so Matt says, sounds like I need to move to Denver. That's exactly what I 100%. Okay, so I love talking about holidays and festivals in different countries and traditions and those kinds of things. So what is your favorite, since you've moved to Denmark, what is your favorite Danish tradition or holiday or something like that you've started experiencing since you've been there?
Yeah, I would definitely say, so kind of the big, particularly eating holidays would be Christmas and Easter. Those are the two big ones.
To the US in that way.
Yes, there's no Thanksgiving. I think probably most people understand why, but just to say there's no Thanksgiving. So Easter and Christmas are the two big eating holidays. I love Christmas in part because my family came over and got to celebrate a Danish Christmas. And it was some of the happiest. It was just fantastic. So first of all, Christmas is celebrated on the 24th here.
Christmas Eve?
Yeah, so it's Christmas Eve. Yeah, so it's celebrated a little bit differently. So if you kind of do, Nick, my partner, his family or his mom really likes the Christmas tradition. So she kind of sticks to some of the how you used to do it in the old days. So it used to be 3 days of eating pretty much. So it started. So you ate the 25th, So it starts on the 23rd. And usually it would be like, oh, Tootsie. So Tootsie came. She came to. That's my aunt. She came to. Christmas, and it was fantastic. So the first day is usually you eat lamb or we had lamb. And it's a really nice dinner, and you get dressed up, and you have the fireplace going. If you have a fireplace, you have all these candles lit. And so the first evening, this is the 23rd.
Okay.
Yeah, so the 23rd in the evening is like your first big meal. And it's usually some kind of meat, because on the 24th, on Christmas Eve, which is when Christmas is celebrating, you have duck. And so that's, and then you have 2 potatoes. You have regular boiled potatoes, and then you have like these sugary caramelized potatoes. There's like a brown sauce. You have pickled cabbage. So it's not, it's definitely different than Thanksgiving. Like there's not necessarily a large variety per se, but there's definitely these like 5 core things that you have, and everyone has them. And God help you if you buy the wrong type of pickled cabbage, because grandma or grandpa will be very upset. Like, it's like, I want the cabbage I had when I was little. Do not give me this new wave cabbage. Do not put cardamom in it. Like, do not spice it. Yeah, and so then you open gifts after that. So, sorry, someone dresses up as Santa Claus, one of the men in the family. So maybe Fafa, which is your, your dad's dad might disappear, and then Santa pops up. And then Santa brings gifts, and then you also dance and sing around the Christmas tree. There's like Christmas songs that you sing. And so you hold hands and you dance around the tree. And then the next day you have a Christmas lunch, which is kind of like leftovers and some soups. Because you're pretty.
That's the 24th?
That's the 25th now.
Okay.
Yeah, because for the 24th is the big day here. So yeah, that's my favorite. I think also because my family was here, and it just felt really special to the 2 families to celebrate it together.
Yeah, that's awesome. So your family is still living in the U.S. Virgin Islands?
So some of them are, and some of them are in New York. So my New York family came.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
That's definitely fun, and I'm sure a fun experience for them too, to kind of see where you're from. Tootsie said we had so much fun.
Yeah.
That sounds like fun. Okay, something very intriguing to me to make the winter months more fun. I know I'm going to mispronounce this, so correct me, but
Yeah.
H-Y-G-G-E. Tell me about this concept. Tell me how to pronounce it.
Welcome to my life learning Danish. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, that's fine. Just tell me about it. What is it? And it feels like a happiness. So tell us about it.
Yeah, so it's called hygge. So like
Hygge.
Hugh Grant. So I guess hygge, is kind of the best way to think about it. And there's no great translation. I mean, if you translate it one-to-one, it'll often say coziness in English, but it's more a state of being. It's about just having like a really nice, intimate time with a group of friends. Like you don't really hygge on the beach. It's kind of like, your friends come over, or maybe your family comes over, and you have dinner and you have candles lit and you guys catch up. And it's just that feeling of kind of being together.
Nice.
Yeah.
So is it a verb, like we're going to hygge, or is it like I felt very hygge, or is there no way to translate that into English in a way that it'll make sense?
Oh, now you're hitting me with hard questions. So there is hyggeligt, which is det var så hyggeligt. Hyggeligt would be, oh my gosh, my grammar is like, I guess that would be an adjective.
Okay.
No, adverb. Oh God. Okay. I'm exposed.
Sorry, I also studied grammar and proofreading in college. That was my major. So I'm always interested in like thinking about different words like that and how I can say them in English. So
yeah. So it is so hyggeligt. So that would be an adverb, right? No. Adjective.
An adjective.
Thank you. So I guess hygge would be, I guess it's a noun then. I'm not sure.
Okay.
That's a good question.
Okay,
I'll get back to you on that.
Do you say like people are coming over for a night of hygge, or is it just like I felt, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
Do you say that to people like come over and we'll have a night of hygge, or is it just kind of like a thing that you feel internally and you're like, I know that this felt like cozy and nice, and I know how to identify that feeling?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think when I've heard it, it's kind of after the fact. So it would be like, thanks, Alexandra, for this conversation. It was so hyggeligt. Like,
Oh,
it was so
okay.
lovely to see you, kind of, or like, oh, you had this, Thanksgiving was like hyggeligt, like you would kind of use it that way.
Okay, that makes sense.
Oh, you can use it as a verb. My bad. You can, yeah. You can say hygge us, like come over and we'll hygge. No, you can. You can.
That's cute. I like that. I like it a lot. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about food, because obviously that's definitely both of our main interests.
Mhm.
The first thing I want to talk about is herring.
Okay.
Because herring, we do not have herring in the United States, and that is a huge dish in Scandinavian countries.
Mhm.
And so I want to hear about what you think about herring. Explain to people that don't know what herring is, and tell us, how you think about it and how it's eaten there.
Yeah, so I'll say this from the beginning. I don't like herring. I'm trying.
With me, but maybe if there are Danish people on the call.
Yeah, I feel almost like embarrassed to say that. No, so herring, it's a small fish. It's bigger than an anchovy, smaller than a mackerel, I guess, but that same colored. It's a white fish. It's got quite a lot of bones, which is part of the reason I think I'm like, oh, that's a lot of work. But no, it is definitely a cornerstone food. You'll have it for Easter. If you go to like a traditional Danish lunch, you'll have it. You can have it pickled, which is not raw. It's usually salted first.
Okay.
It's cured first and then pickled. You can have it fried and then pickled. You can have it smoked. It's just one of those. You can have it in tomato sauce. It's like tuna fish. I don't know what an equivalent would be. It's eaten a lot.
I wonder if it's one of those foods that people that are from the country tend to have a fonder opinion of it than people coming from outside, just because it's so different than what we're used to.
Probably. I would liken it.
With it.
Yeah, like an anchovy maybe. Like it's There's other fish that I prefer, Danish fish, but yeah, I would liken it to an anchovy. Yeah, Danes are very fond of, Scandinavians in general are very fond of herring. So
okay.
Yeah.
And those open-faced sandwiches, we talked about that as well when we were talking about Czech Republic, because open-faced sandwiches are popular there too. But you guys also do open-faced sandwiches. I have a recipe for them.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Do you put herring on them, or what are some popular toppings?
Definitely.
In Denmark?
Yeah, so if you go, smørrebrød, or the open-faced sandwich, is only eaten for lunch. So you don't eat it for breakfast per se, and you don't eat it for dinner. Although sometimes, I guess if I put an asterisk, like if you're having a quick meal, you could just have a piece of rye bread and like slice some egg on it or potatoes, and that's like, a quick meal on the go, quick dinner. But so a traditional lunch will start with herring as your open fish sandwich. So you'll get like a basket of rye bread, and then you'll get herring, typically marinated herring, which is the one that's been cured and then marinated. And you have that with like capers, something kind of salty, and red onions, and then always some garnish for some color. And then you also usually have like a curry herring, which is kind of that same marinated herring, but in like a creme fraiche curry sauce. So like a creme fraiche with some curry seasoning in it. And that you will also put on rye bread. So that's like a very typical, so if you do like a birthday lunch, or like an anniversary lunch, you'll have that. You'll start with that. And then it's chicken, and then it's meat.
Then it's, what'd you say, chicken and what?
Chicken, and then your red meat. So roast beef or liver pate. I just joined, but I'm already hungry.
I love that. That's the goal, right?
Yeah.
And just so everybody knows, I don't think I said this at the beginning, we're going to be assembling a Danish dessert at the end of this. So if you want to see that, make sure to stick around till the end. That's definitely interesting. I didn't expect curry to be one of like the most popular ways to eat herring or to have those open faced sandwiches. So I definitely learned something.
Yeah.
Okay, tell me a little bit. So I asked you about a couple of the specific foods I was interested in, but just tell me generically about the food in Denmark. Like, what types of meats are popular to eat, what vegetables, what spices, and we'll talk about that first, and then afterwards I want to talk to you about the new Nordic culinary.
Yeah.
But first talk to me about some of the traditional like meats and spices and vegetables and those kinds of things. What do you eat there?
Yeah, so breakfast, maybe that's the best way to start thinking about it. Breakfast is, it's a big dairy country, so big pork and dairy country. It's funny, Nick said when he was growing up, all the good bacon got exported to the US and they had like the grade B bacon because all the good stuff went abroad. But now there's good stuff here too.
That's so funny.
Yeah, so breakfast is usually just like granola and yogurt or a cup of coffee. Actually, you know, the Danish that we have in the morning, people usually don't have that. I mean, maybe they'll have it at the office if someone has like a birthday or something, but usually it's like
the pastry,
yeah,
Danish pastry, like cheese or jelly or something like that.
Right. And actually, they're never with cheese here, which is, I don't know.
That's my favorite way to eat them.
I don't know how that happened. Cheese and cherries, never.
Are they as popular in Denmark as we would think they would be by calling them Danish pastries here in America?
Yeah, so they're actually so they're not called Danishes in Denmark. They're actually when you directly translate it, called Vienna bread, because the tradition came in from Vienna to make kind of like that croissant, that laminated dough.
So Austrian.
Yeah.
Perhaps. Okay.
So it's actually, I mean, the Danes then made it their own, but the technique of learning how to do laminated dough came in from bakers from Vienna. And it's actually called Wienerbrot, and my pronunciation is not fantastic, which is Vienna bread. And they are super popular. I mean, literally we have 3 bakeries within a 2-block radius around our house, and they all sell pastries. Pastries and breads and buns. So super popular, but that's not usually what people will eat for breakfast. So you'll have like a bun and cheese, or you'll have like oats, particularly if you have kids, you'll have oats, or you'll have like granola with yogurt or just a cup of coffee. And then lunch, if you're an adult, another reason maybe they're so happy, they usually get lunch at work. They have a cantina. So lunch is
catered in?
Sorry?
Cantina, meaning like there's a restaurant there, or
yeah, like a cafeteria.
Oh, a cafeteria. Okay.
Yeah, so they get lunch subsidized through work. So people usually don't pack their own lunch; they eat at work. And then dinner is usually pretty simple, like meats, potatoes. But it's a big potato country, a big meat country, big pork country. Yeah. So
I was just doing some of my recipes for Denmark, and I'll tell you what I decided to make.
Yes, please do.
You can correct again my pronunciation if you need to. Okay, we'll answer this question in a second. What are some common Danish desserts? We'll come back to that in a second. I made glog, which is mulled wine. So that was really delicious. I liked that a lot. And I made that in my Instant Pot just because I thought maybe try to like quicken it up a little bit. I like trying things in my Instant Pot. So that one I tried doing in my Instant Pot. It turned out really good. So that was good. I also did fricadella. Yeah, fricadella. I love those. Those are so good. I did like a creamy gravy and like sage sauce on them. That was delicious. And then the reason I started talking about this is because you said meat and potatoes country. And so yesterday I did stegflæsk. Yep. Which is
what do you think?
That don't know, it's potatoes, and then it's crispy pork belly that I baked in my oven. So we did crispy pork belly, and then it's like a cream-based parsley sauce that goes on top of the potatoes on the pork belly. And that was really delicious too. That's the national dish of the country, right? Exactly. Yeah. That one I had a little trouble with because all of the recipes that I found online, I try to stay pretty consistent with what I find online because I don't want to change things too much and then have it not be authentic. Have you ever made stegflæsk before? Have you ever made that at home?
I'm not a huge pork eater, but Nick makes it all the time, and the trick is how you salt it.
I was going to ask, is there lots of seasonings that he puts in it, or does he just do like salt and pepper like the recipe that I found online?
I actually don't even think he does pepper. He slices the fat and then puts salt in between so that the fat gets nice and crispy. And sometimes he'll put a couple bay leaves. But it's definitely, there's a fine line because sometimes you can over salt it. You need enough salt that it makes it nice and crispy on top, but not too much that it's too salty.
That makes sense. Yeah, with the actual parsley sauce,
Mhm.
I put some like onion powder and garlic powder in there just for like some extra little flavor too.
Mhm.
But I didn't want to put in too much extra because I didn't want to
Yeah.
take away from it being the Danish version of that.
Yeah.
All right, let's go back to this question from ExquisMV. What are some common Danish desserts? I'm surprised I didn't ask you this because dessert is my favorite thing of all time. So what do you eat for dessert today?
Yeah, there's lots of different desserts, and some of it, again, is like some stuff you eat at Christmas, sometimes some stuff you eat at other times. What's my favorite? So there's actually this, a lot of it's usually whipped cream and some kind of either cake or fruit.
Okay.
So the first one that comes to mind, I'm not going to try to pronounce this because this is how Danes haze foreigners who try to speak. It's like, you know how we go like she sells seashells by the seashore. It's something like that, but in Danish. So it's red. Yeah, it's the dessert is like red porridge with cream, and it's like wolgolmeflo. And I said it horribly, but that's like an indication of what you're supposed to say. It's like a lot of R's and like oohs in it. And that's like stewed berries with like freshly whipped cream. And it's actually quite nice because you do that seasonally.
Right.
There's a nice marzipan's really big here. So, which is, crushed almonds and sugar. That's for New Year's Eve. You have what's called like this big cake. And it's like rings of marzipan. It looks like the Fisher-Price toy that you stack rings on. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I know what you're talking about. Yeah, where the rings are different colors and they get smaller.
Yeah. So the cake literally looks like that, and it's rings of marzipan, and then you put like icing on it. And so that's what you have for New Year's Eve. But marzipan's a big Christmas. Yeah.
I love
There's and then there's some, I really like a marzipan tart. So it's kind of like a pie base, but it's made out of marzipan, and then you put chocolate over it, and then you put some whipped cream and strawberries on top. So that's one of my favorites.
And so the dish that we're making today kind of fits into your category of like traditional Danish desserts. It's cream and it's fruit. So that's cool that we get to try that today. Photos and Food says there's an episode of Somebody Feed Phil in Copenhagen that features amazing foods and traditions.
Oh, nice.
My bucket list. Cool. Okay, so I was talking to you before the interview, and I was like, okay, these are some things I'm thinking about asking you. Anything else I should ask about? And you were like, yes, ask me about the new Nordic culinary movement, because I know that that's a really big deal right now, and it has definitely changed the food culture a lot. So tell me what that means and how you kind of see it in Denmark now.
Yeah, so the new Nordic, it's a culinary movement. It started almost 20 years ago, and it started with a group of chefs led by Claus Meyer, who's a Danish chef and restaurateur, who most people would know of from Noma. He's one of the co-founders of Noma, and so the whole idea, it definitely drew on the California farm to table movement of like using seasonal ingredients and then employing Nordic traditions or Viking traditions, if you will, like traditional ways of preparing. I'm considering selling my house to visit Noma.
I can't have a conversation about Danish food without talking about Noma. So for those of you that don't know, we'll explain that.
There are other restaurants that are, not that I'm knocking Noma, there are other restaurants that doesn't require a mortgage to eat at, and they're also quite good. So you don't have to sell your house if you don't want to. And so, so it was great. So it was things like drawing on ingredients that maybe people had eaten in the past and maybe weren't eaten currently, and then kind of obviously presenting it quite beautifully. So it's not big on seasoning, like in case you probably noticed from most of the recipes you cook, like it's not about seasoning, but it's more about pickling or curing, because, remember, Scandinavia is pretty far north. Pretty much nothing grows in winter. So, before these countries became kind of the wealthy countries that they are, like you literally lived off of what you could farm or catch. So if you couldn't, the herring comes in spring, they come in to spawn, and that's when you catch all the herring. So you needed to make that herring last until the next year. Same thing with cod. Same thing with fruits and vegetables. Summer's really short here. We have about like a proper summer's over. Summer was over weeks ago. Yeah. And so like you have to figure out how to make the fruits last. So you pickle them or you make jams. So a lot of it was kind of drawing on these traditional practices with food, maybe looking to like big on foraging, which has been one of the only plus sides of COVID on this side has been it's like a lot of there hasn't been much traffic. So you've actually been able to kind of forage in Copenhagen pretty nicely and find some stuff that you wouldn't normally maybe look for or eat. But yeah, does that answer your question?
So you're talking about taking like traditional foods and ingredients and kind of like making them modern or bringing them back to Denmark. And I noticed in my research that Stegflæsk, the dish we were talking about with the pork belly and potatoes, the parsley sauce, that's the national dish of the country, but it didn't become the national dish of the country until like 2015 or something.
Yeah.
Around there. So that probably, without me realizing it, that was probably a influence from the New Nordic culinary movement, I would assume, because all the research I read was saying that they used to eat that in like the 1800s or something like that with pork belly as well.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that? Or?
I would actually probably say when we've eaten New Nordic, it would probably, because pork and, so there's kind of two larger things. So the national dish, so the Stegflæsk, came around in the 1800s, kind of with the advent of the oven. So that's really what kind of where you get modern Danish cuisine from. Like all the baking is with the oven, because now you could cook more than one thing, you could bake. So there's kind of that half of the culinary history, and which is newer, last 200 years. But then I feel like the New Nordic draws more on the prehistory before that. So it would be more like oysters are a good example. Like Denmark has some fantastic oysters, but it's not really a part of the modern cuisine. Whereas like the New Nordic then started to bring back the oyster and say like, this is how you can dress it up. You can eat it with a dill sauce with foraged sea cucumber on top. You know what? It just kind of, so it would be, you wouldn't find Stegflæsk at like that would be more grandma's food. Like, I know that sounds bad, but I mean that in the most, like, yeah.
Yeah. But I understand what you're saying. That's more traditional, whereas the New Nordic culinary movement is like more unique pairings that are like newer. Is that accurate?
Yeah,
okay.
I would say that. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So I want to ask you about snacks in a second. But
Okay.
Maybe let's talk about snacks now. Let's talk about snacks. I know you have a really good article on your website about Danish snacks. So tell me, what are typical snacks in Denmark? And we were talking before that there's a lot of licorice, right? Like junk food is very licorice based there, correct?
Yeah, so there's, it's definitely, I mean, chocolate's big because who doesn't love chocolate? But I would definitely say it's a lot more, from what I grew up with, definitely licorice and gummies, if that's, I don't know, do you eat a lot of gummies in Michigan? Like gummy candies or?
Yesterday, I'm more of a chocolate gal, but my brother's more of like a soury candy person.
Gotcha.
So he's had a lot of gummies growing up, but that's not my thing.
Gotcha. So I would say it's definitely the chocolate, the licorice, and gummies. A lot of chips are like chips are also kind of different. You can get kind of the classic kettle potato chips, but then there's like other chips that they have, or like pork rinds. But yeah, I would say licorice candy is the big divider. And supposedly if you live here long enough, you acquire a taste for it. I have yet to have that happen. I do not like it. I do not want it near me.
You're getting a clap from, I'm not going to be able to try to pronounce that, but you're getting a clap there talking about licorice and junk food. So.
I can't. It's, and they put this, it's salty licorice has this compound called like, I think ammonium chloride or ammonium something, which pharmacists used to use, to get your cold. And so that's what's sprinkled on the licorice. No, thank you.
That's so funny. I always think it's interesting learning about like the junk food in other countries. It's so different sometimes than what we're used to, and it's interesting to see what other countries come up with and what people in other countries like to eat. So
yeah.
All right. Is there anything that's eaten in Denmark that's not eaten anywhere else in the world?
Yeah, I was sitting with this.
Herring.
Yeah, I was sitting with that for a while. I would probably say no, because there is a lot of overlapping traditions with Northern Germany, with Norway, with Sweden, with Iceland. So no, I mean, I definitely think that no one does a pastry the way the Danes do a pastry. I mean, they make a pretty good pastry.
Is there any like ingredients that you love that just aren't the same unless you're in Germany? Like if you're at, visiting your family and you want to make them something, you're like, oh, it's just not going to be the same if I don't have this ingredient from Denmark.
I wouldn't say ingredient. I would say I've gotten really fond of the rye bread, which takes some time. I didn't like it at first. It's a bit sour. It almost has a little bit of like an acid bite to it, but the rye here is kind of like, it's one of the reasons the whiskey's become so popular, is the rye here is like really, really good. And so, it's just something about the rye bread and the smoked fish. I think the smoked fish is pretty fantastic too. It's like,
does make sense. I've read a lot about rye bread.
Yeah.
How very popular.
Yeah.
We have a good question. Can you talk about the cuisine of the Virgin Islands? Because like you were mentioning, until about 100 years ago, they were a territory of Denmark. So how is the food there?
Yeah, it's similar to some other Caribbean islands. There are some things that we do differently. It's a lot of fish. It's definitely also pork, stews, big stews. I remember my grandma, like, lunch is a big meal. So it'd be like a stewed fish, or we have something called, kalaloo, which is kind of like a collard green stew, with, pork in it. Or sometimes you can do conch, which is like a big sea snail. You ever see people like blowing that shell? Yep, there's a giant sea snail inside of it, and we eat that, and it's quite tasty. You can fry it, you can butter it, you can stew it.
I went to the Bahamas a couple weeks after I cooked the Bahamas. Like it just happened that like I had a work trip that went to the Bahamas, and so I took a cooking class while I was in the Bahamas, and I couldn't find conch in America. I called every single like specialty grocery store, like fish market, anywhere I could find. They were like, no, we don't have any here. So I went to the Bahamas and I was like, I'm excited to try conch here. And we took a cooking class to make conch salad.
Okay.
And took the reproductive organ out of the conch and had one of us try it. And I was live streaming for the foreign pork. So I was like, well, I can't.
Now you have to do it.
So I tried the reproductive organ of the conch, and it was, it actually wasn't that, it just tasted like salty spaghetti. It was
okay.
Really thing. But they were like, we eat it here, somebody's got to try it. And I was like, well, I'm in this thing now. It's probably the most unique thing I've ever eaten.
Yeah, that's up there.
That's so funny. So do you see any like Danish influences in the food of the Virgin Islands?
Yes and no. I would say there's definitely some like that almond, the New Year's Eve, the Æblekage that I was talking about that kind of looks like the Fisher Price toy that some people will still kind of make. And then definitely some bake, like we make a pie, and the tradition of baking definitely came from the Danes, like using flour because we don't grow flour. That would have come over from Europe. And but then we fill it with like local fruits. So like you can do like a coconut's not fruit, but you can do a coconut pie. You can do like we call it tart, a guava tart. And those are some of my favorites too.
That sounds delicious.
Yeah.
Very tropical.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. What is your favorite recipe from Denmark, and what is your least favorite food that is traditionally Danish?
I'll start with the last part. So licorice is my least favorite. And I really want to like herring, but I haven't. Maybe it'll happen one day. I don't know, but that's
maybe it's acquired. Maybe you just have to like try it once a year.
Yeah.
Like, oh, hey, I like it now.
Yeah, I've come around to the mackerel. That took a bit of time too. But yeah, herring. I don't know. But that's a good question. My my favorite Danish recipe probably would be this one. So my mother-in-law, my partner's mom, makes this like nuts like cake. So it's kind of like it's just like flour, lots of butter, of course, and nuts, and then you just make like a thin like round cake layer. And then because everything always has dairy here because it's a big cow country, it's like layers of like freshly whipped cream and then fruit. And it's just, I don't know, it's just not too heavy. It's not too sweet. And like the nuts give it a really nice flavor. So that's one of my favorites.
Delicious.
Yeah.
Sounds good. All right. Well, on that note, with talking about your favorite dessert,
Yes.
Fruit and whipped cream, let's make our own dessert with fruit and whipped cream. So I approached you and I was like, I really want to try. Actually, you approached me and you were like, hey, let's make some Danish dessert, and that was an awesome idea. I don't know why I haven't done that before. So props to you for that one. And so I was like, yeah, that sounds great. Let me know something that you would want to assemble, and you came up with this recipe from your partner's grandmother, right?
Great grandmother. Yeah.
Great grandmother.
Great grandma. Mm-hmm.
So tell us a little bit about what we're going to be making today. And just so everybody knows, we've prepped a lot of the ingredients already, so we're just going to be kind of doing the assembly of it, but we'll verbally talk through what we did to get each of the steps correct. So before we get into that, tell us what the recipe is and why it's special.
Okay, so we are making Æblekage, which literally means apple cake. And that's a bit of a misnomer because it's not actually a cake. And it's it's a very classic Danish dessert. It's something that it's not super difficult to make. It's very tasty. It's very seasonal because now it's apple season into winter time. So it's just something, it's like, okay, the long summer days are over. Now it's just something comforting. And it's, I don't know, it's something that you would have had as a kid and you're just always quite fond of it. And so when we were talking about recipes, I asked my mother-in-law and I was like, hey, what do you think we should make? And she's like, yeah, it's her grandma's recipe. Yeah. And so it's essentially apples, and it would have been apples from your backyard or your neighbor's backyard, peeled and stewed into like an apple porridge. And then again, because it's big dairy country, with some whipped cream that you would have freshly whipped, and some cookies or bread, depending on what you had left over.
I won't lie to you. I took a little taster of the apples yesterday when I was prepping them, and I loved it. So I'm excited to stand up so we can assemble this. So let's talk a little bit. So first we have these apples here.
Mm-hmm.
So do you want to walk through the steps and what's included? Do you want me to do it?
Either way. Oh, okay. If I can do it, if you're assembling. So this is like a serving for 4. Or maybe 2, I don't know. I made it, and then I made half a portion of that, and I was like, I could eat this all myself. So I'm just gonna put a little asterisk next to that. So it's about 300 grams of apples, which is kind of like 3 or 4 apples, and you peel them, and obviously wash them first, peel them, and then slice them. I like to slice them like really thinly, just because that's how I like to slice my fruit, but you can dice them however you want.
Sliced them like this. Did I do good?
Oh yeah, good job. Yep. And then you put it in a pot, and then you add 30 grams of sugar, if I'm not mistaken, is next. And then brown or white, whatever sugar you'd like to use.
What did you use?
I think I also used white sugar this time. But that was more an aesthetic thing, because the vanilla bean, the first batch of the vanilla bean made it really dark. So I was like, I kind of want like a golden color. So then I went to white sugar. Totally your preference. And then now you add your spices. So this is where great grandma and I differed, because she just put vanilla in it, and I'm going to put some spices in there. So it's about a teaspoon of cardamom, because everything's better with cardamom. Yes. Yeah. I like, I forgot what's next, I think. Is it the cayenne?
Cayenne?
Yes, cayenne, because everything's also better with a little bit of chili. And cinnamon, which is not my big favorite, so I just put a bit of sprinkle, but you put to your liking. If you're a cinnamon fan, you can put more cinnamon.
I'm flipped. I love cinnamon, and I'm a weenie with spice.
Oh!
So I put a little more cinnamon, a little less cayenne.
Gotcha.
But that's good because you can kind of flavor it to your liking.
Yeah, yeah. And then a vanilla bean, and I just put the vanilla bean right in.
No seeds like scraped out or anything.
No,
like that. That's what I did too.
Yeah, and then water.
Yep, cup of water.
Yeah. I like mine a little soggy, so I add a little bit, not soggy, but a little more juicy, if you will. So I add a little bit more water. Some people use less. And then, yeah, you just bring that to a boil and then let it simmer from anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes.
I think I did about 15. You said you like a little bit of the extra juice left in the bottom. So
Yeah.
I left a little bit extra juice, and that's good. I don't know if you can see it, but
Ooh.
there's some yummy flavor in there, so that's delicious.
Yeah. So,
all right, so next up, we have these. Okay. Talk to me about the difference between the breadcrumbs and cookies.
yeah. So this is called an old days recipe, because a lot of times in the old days they would use something called rasp in Danish, which is literally breadcrumbs. So it would be the crust of white bread that's then been baked in the oven, like chopped up or crumbled into small pieces, baked in the oven, and then crumbled further. So that's what, yeah, exactly. So that's what that is. More contemporary recipes will use an almond cookie, which is just almonds, flour, and butter, sugar. But rasp is the old way grandma would make it.
And is that, do they make that sweet in any way, or is it just breadcrumbs?
So it would normally just be breadcrumbs. Now you can buy it in the store, and I think sometimes they put a little bit of sugar in it.
They put sweetening in it?
Yeah.
So I used Biscoff cookies.
Ooh.
Leftover Biscoff cookies, which are like cinnamony cookies, and I figured they would taste good with the cinnamony apples.
Smart.
So and for those people that don't know Biscoff cookies, but what they serve on Delta flights, which are my favorite.
Okay.
I love Biscoff. So one of my friends brought me a package a couple weeks ago, and I had it left over, so I was like, okay, I'm going to use that as the filling there, which it pairs very well. So if you haven't tried that yet, they originated in Belgium, but I was like, they'll be good in this dish.
You're fine. I won't tell.
Okay, and then the top layer.
Whipped cream.
Whipped cream.
Mm-hmm. So
take this whipped cream.
Mm-hmm.
You can walk us through that too.
Yeah. So here, I actually don't think I've ever even seen a can of whipped cream in the grocery store. I imagine it must be, but everyone pretty much whips their own cream, which I think is fantastic. So
yeah, it's really easy to do.
Yeah, so it's unsweetened, which is why you want the apple porridge, if you will, to be sweet, because your whipped cream will be unsweetened, so it kind of balances out the flavor. And so it's 38% fat heavy cream, and you just whip it with a hand mixer. It takes a couple minutes. It's actually pretty easy. You can put a little vanilla essence.
And your instructions, I think with a hand mixer, it said 5 minutes. With my KitchenAid, it took like a minute and a half. It was so nice. It was very quick. So
I'm jealous. Yeah, I have a little beat up hand mixer that I just like stand there.
No, it's good. Did I layer them in the right order?
Perfect. Yep. You did perfect. So it's apples, and then the cookies are the rasp, and then cream, and you can do as many layers as you want, but that is usually the way it's done. And then, yeah, if you want to put some on top. It's cute.
There you have it.
Yeah.
Apple cake that is not cake. I'll take a little bite. I always have a hard time like trying things on camera because I take too big of bites normally, and then I'm chewing for too long. So let me take like a little bite of this.
Nice crunch.
Thank you. It's good because it's not like the cookies make it sweet, but the cream is not sweet. Oh, Marina says it looks yummy. Thank you, Marina. So yeah, the cream isn't that sweet, so it's good to have the like apples on the bottom that make it sweet, but it's not overwhelming.
Yeah,
it's delicious.
I noticed that Danish desserts, they're not overly sweet. You never walk away feeling like, like that was too much.
Yeah, yeah, that's good because in America that's definitely how it is, and I'll admit I have a sweet tooth, but every once in a while it's nice to have this like lightness.
Yeah.
Is this recipe good with other fruits? That's a good question.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I would absolutely. I haven't tried it, but that's not a bad idea. I mean, the red porridge with cream is kind of like this without the cookies. So you could easily stew whatever red summer fruit or stone fruit you wanted.
Like raspberries.
Yeah, totally. Or rhubarb.
Yeah.
Ooh, this would be really good with rhubarb in spring.
You're gonna have to, you can try that in put it on your
Yeah,
page.
good question. Was that Matt? Good question, Matt.
Inspired some ideas there. Yeah, I know the other option was the red berry dessert for us to make, but I was like, well, I think it's both of our first weeks of fall, so let's play into the apples.
Exactly.
Birthday with confidence on Santa.
Oh, nice.
Try it. Good.
Let us know how it goes.
I also made a Instagram reel of the steps. So
Oh, great.
I'll put that on my page too, so that people can follow along and see the steps of making it. All right, Jaughna, I think those are all the questions I have. Thanks for showing us how to make this dessert and for talking about Denmark. It was such a pleasure to see you again and talk to you.
Thanks for having me. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I cut you off.
No. I was saying when you reached out, I was like, oh, this is awesome. It's nice to connect again.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell everyone where they can find you, like what your website is? So nice to connect again. Do you want to tell everyone where they can find you?
Yeah, so you can find me at two websites. That is both my social media handle and my website. So please check me out.
All right, perfect. I think the live ended on Instagram. I guess it cut you off after an hour. So but that is something I want people to be able to see. So I'm going to make the next slide on my Instagram story where to find you, okay? All right. Thank you so much again. It was so nice to see you. And I will save this to IGTV so that people can, and on my YouTube channel and on Facebook.
Yeah,
so
great.
That
Thank you
anybody
so
can come
much.
back and rewatch.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you. Have a good day. Bye.